learn a little bit more about Sugar CRM and what you can do with CRM, be sure and network with the other people here who are existing customers. Those of you, the existing customers, you interested in learning a little bit about version 7? Is that a big part of it? I see some nods, yes. We're very, very excited about that release of the product. It's the culmination really of 3 years worth of effort on our part to rework, re-architect the product, to let us bring a lot more of the latest generation of technology in front of people, and also to really be the first embodiment of the vision of ours, which is bringing CRM to the point where it truly helps the individual salesperson or the individual in any customer-facing role, bringing a great modern level of user experience to them, an ease of use that's unparalleled in the industry, and an ability to extend and adapt that is unparalleled as well. So we're very, very excited about it. You'll see a lot about it today. So it's been a great advance for us in terms of generation of the product. What I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about what's been happening in the world around social business. So show you some of how I and we at Sugar view the changes around social business, and tie that in a bit to what you can do with the product. So with that, let me walk through the outline here. I'm going to talk about how the world has changed. The world has changed in a world where we have the internet, and people can connect to anyone at any time. You have those. You now have a world in which customers' expectations have changed. I'll give you a set of rules around how customer interaction has changed and how you now need to talk to your customers in that world. And then finally, the answer, okay, so what now? So how do we respond to that? How do we answer that? I'll give you some examples from Sugar as we do that. So first of all, let's talk about this world of change. The way people buy has changed. That's a fundamental difference in the social world. Now, it used to be that as a vendor, you could control the messaging to your customers. The primary way your customers found out about you was through advertising, through maybe white papers, maybe through reviews, maybe through analyst reports, depending on your business or how you sold. But there were channels of communication you had relatively good control over. You could control the messaging, control the positioning. You worked with analysts, you worked with reviewers, you worked on advertising, all of those pieces. But in today's world, it's no longer the case that you can control that messaging. The internet has enabled the individual customer to get their information from anywhere. And how many of us have gone on the internet to buy something? First thing we do is a Google search, and up comes 2 or 3 forums talking about that product or that category. And suddenly all of our information is not coming from any of the vendors, it's coming from our peers. And that's a big change. The internet has enabled buyers, us as individuals or corporate buyers, to now reach out and gather the information they want and need from their peers. The trusted source for a buyer today is not an analyst firm, it's not the company, it's someone else like you. It's one of your peers. And how do we find those peers today? It's the internet. And the internet has enabled that change in buying habits. So you no longer control that message, and it goes through your peers. The buyer's peers are the people who are primarily delivering it today. So in the traditional buying model, you used to be able to guide the customer through this process. You could walk them through. You could follow a position with them. You could take them and move them along from when they. You could typically model this out. And I don't know if you've ever mapped these customer journeys out in part around the buying process, but we used to do these where we talked about how the customer learned about us, how they found us, whether it was particular advertising media or some other source, and then how they gathered more information, and eventually we'd engage with them. Maybe it was with telesales, or maybe direct sales, or through a channel partner that would move them along and buy. But you used to be able to map out that process. Well, in a world where you now have all the social media, that process has gotten a lot more confusing. Because at every opportunity, the customer now has the chance, the opportunity to gather information from different points along the way. So you can no longer count on moving them linearly through that process. All along the way, they're bombarded with other information, they're bombarded with other material. So they're now moving and they're looking, and you can be in what used to be the middle of the step, and suddenly they can go off to the side here because they now had a new source of information they didn't have before off of social media and the internet. So social is changing the way the way people shop, buy, accumulate that information. What does that mean for how we do business? Well, I put together a set of, I'll say, rules, guidelines that I want to talk you through today for doing business in this new, changed social world. And the first of those is you are not in control. First thing to remember, the control is shifted to the customer, to the buyer. And I want to give you an example of that. So I don't know if any of you remember this incident, but there was an incident where a musician was flying United Airlines, and United Airlines broke his guitar. I don't know if any of you remember this. Yeah, a few people remember it. The customer, the buyer, with social media and the internet, now has an ability to reach the world in a way that we couldn't have imagined just 5, 10, 15 years ago. I want to show you what happens when the customer takes control. It's fun to get to play videos. Notice the guitar there is playing. So I'm gonna pause and stop it there. This video, in a year's time, gets as many impressions as United's entire advertising budget for the year. Okay? Now think about that. You're in the business. Here is one customer who's had a bad experience, but it happens to be a customer who's got the ability to get a message out. And now, through YouTube, which is where this is published, through YouTube, that customer reaches as many people as your entire paid advertising budget for the year. Think about that reach. And he's now branding United as the airline that breaks guitars. Now, that isn't exactly the message that United probably had as their corporate marketing agenda. But the point being that the airline, you as a business, are no longer in control of the message. The consumer is. And if your brand isn't delivering on the message, the consumer is going to tell everyone that, and there's going to be a disconnect. It used to be that when you controlled the advertising media, when you controlled the messaging, when you could control what people saw in a better way, it was easier for you to define how your brand was perceived. In this world where we have social media, the consumer, your buyer, can define the brand for you. And the thing is, it's going to be an authentic definition. It's going to be the definition of your brand that you're actually delivering. So part of the lesson here is that if you want your brand to stand for a particular message, you actually have to deliver to that message as well. Because if there is a disconnect, it will be identified in the market, the consumers will find it, and you'll see this kind of broad reach. By the way, many of the examples we like to put up are these a little bit scary examples where a customer has had a bad experience and is broadcasting it very broadly, but it works both ways. Your customers can be great advocates as well, just as much. The key here is you're not in control, the buyer is, they control the messaging now, they have the reach, and it's possible for that individual consumer to have the reach of an entire expensive part of your brand today. Rule number 2. So that was rule number 1, you're not in control. Rule number 2, traditional marketing is declining. This graph, this is from Booz & Company, that does the survey of marketing spend. And this shows where people are putting their spend and what's happening in that advertising market. And you can see here, the green shows the increase in spend, right? And you can see the red shows decline. And where's it going? Where are people responding? Social media, digital and online spending, interestingly PR. Part of the reason is that PR drives a lot of traffic in the digital world as well. So in fact, PR spend has grown as digital reach has grown and the internet has grown. That's a part of this. There's also a lot of data analysis and analytics. You can see there's a lot of increased spend there. I'm not going to talk about that today, but it's one of the big 4 trends that we see in the overall technology market. Marketing has become a data analytics discipline, much less as a creative discipline. We see that shift happening in marketing. Not going to talk about it today, but that increased data analytics spend is evidence of that or a symptom of that. And then you can see the decline of physical events. Here we are at a physical event today, but in fact, physical event spend is down. People are spending much less time there. I don't know about any of your businesses, but in my business, Sugar CRM, we're much more careful about the physical events we do. We do far fewer big spend physical events. In fact, I could probably count on one hand the number of big events we now do in a year. We still do a lot more of these smaller ones because they work very well for us and can be focused. But we see that in our business. You look at our marketing budget, the amount of dollars that go to those big physical events is in decline relative to the other parts. And you can see here print, TV, and radio, those kinds of ads declining as well. They're not as interactive. You can't get the message out there as quickly. They're not as agile. You can't get as much feedback. I mean, print, Sugar CRM, we do 0 print advertising. So, and I don't know if you see it in business, but this is the way the marketing spend is changing, and it's moving towards the online world here. Another piece of evidence around that is the way people connect with companies has changed. And sorry, this is a little bit washed out on the screen here, but this shows the channels of communication with companies and how they're changing, which ones are increasing in importance and which ones are decreasing in importance. And you can see here that chart above shows what's growing. Okay, what's growing in importance are search engine optimization, blogs, those kinds of channels. What's declining down here? Well, the big ones, things like direct mail, trade shows, telemarketing are all declining in importance. So the way we reach people is changing, that the marketing is moved. So the traditional things that you used to think of doing, telemarketing, direct mail, all of those pieces, significant decline. I look at our business in terms of just, again, looking at my own business here. Where do we spend? What's our spend? Search engine optimization is big. People find us online and on the internet. Those kind of areas are big blogs, posting. Again, not something I'm going to talk about today, but in the social media world, a big part of it is generating online content, pull traffic to your business and help people find you. That's where we spend a lot of money today ourselves, as an example of this. And then things like direct mail, I can't think of the case where we've at Sugar CRM, ever done a direct mailer. 15 years ago when I was running VA Linux, we did direct mail concepts. We sent things to Director of IT and CIO, and we did those pieces. Today, you find those people online, and that's the reach there. So these methods, the way people connect has changed. Marketing has changed here. So that was rule number 2. Rule number 3. What's the big marketing on the internet? Well, go back to that, the intro here where I talked about people finding who is the key source for someone? Who did people trust? Their peer. How did their peer get to know the company? How do they understand it? Where did they really develop an understanding of it? Through customer service, customer support. Customer service and customer support has become the new marketing in that sense. It's very, very important because your customers are finding out about you by talking to your existing customers. They're finding each other on the internet. The internet has enabled that. It's now the case that it's easy for me to go online and whatever I'm looking to buy, find dozens of other people who've already bought and used that product or service. So your customer support to your existing customers becomes a very important piece of your marketing. I just put up the example here of Rackspace. We happen to be a customer of Rackspace, so we consume this, we understand it a bit. But their basis is around, they built their business and around fanatical support. That is their model. That's how they define their business. That infuses what they do, and it pays off very well for them in marketing and positioning on the internet. It's how people find them and how people. It's why people choose them over their competitors. But this is the new form of marketing on the internet. Is that customer service or support? So that becomes absolutely critical to you. One of the ways we test this, and the market is moving to test this, is something called the Net Promoter Score. How many are familiar with that? Anybody using NPS today? Some, maybe one person. So the question here is, how likely is it that you would recommend this company to a friend or This is the question that you ask your customer about your business. How likely are they to recommend you to a friend or colleague? We also actually ask the question, have you recommended us to a friend or colleague? Much more direct, have they actually taken action there? And what you're looking for are people who rate that a 9 or a 10 on a 10-point scale. How likely am I to recommend to a friend or colleague? 9 or 10. Those are your promoters. Those are the people who are going to talk about your business. So we at Sugar7, for example, use these two principles together. Whenever we have a customer support interaction, we follow up and we ask this question of our customers in customer support. And I'll brag a little bit. We have a Net Promoter Score of about 76% or so, which is among the best of the best. So we're really pleased with that, what we've been able to achieve there. But the point of this is customer service defines your brand now. It becomes the new marketing. It's incredibly important in a world where your customers are finding out about you on the internet through your peers. And one way to measure it is asking your customers, would they recommend you? Would they recommend you to a friend or colleague? This is a great way to do that. Rule number 4 in this world of new social media, you have to be part of the conversation. And this is a bit of a change in the traditional view of marketing. I've thrown up an example here of Zappos, which is a company that's very, very good at being part of the conversation. And when I say be part of the conversation, what I mean is marketing for a long time became a discipline in which we talked at the customer, not with the customer. Some of you may recall the statement that markets are conversations, the Clue Train Manifesto, Doc Searles, some of those, the work on marketing. Markets are conversations, and marketing in this world has become more and more about being that conversation. The internet has enabled us to have conversations with customers, not talk at them, but talk with them. We now have so many different channels of digital communication so that we can reach many, many people in forms that we couldn't reach before. And you think, you go back to the theme here, you look at the decline of print media, you look at the decline of traditional advertising, radio, television, print. It's because most of those, part of what you see there is most of those mechanisms are us, the company, as a vendor talking. They're not us as a vendor interacting or listening. And you look at the rise of social media and internet marketing and advertising venues, most of them are interactive. They're an opportunity for us to engage. So it needs to become, here you need to not just talk at people. And this is a mistake people make in marketing as they try to apply traditional marketing in the social media world. So they'll go out and say, okay, we've been broadcasting before, now we go on Twitter or Facebook and we broadcast. But in fact, those are interactive venues where people can respond. And you have to set up whatever mechanisms you use for working with those channels to be interactive, i.e. listen and respond. It's interesting, I'll give you a couple personal anecdotes that sort of surprised me when they started doing it. I happen to fly United Airlines in spite of the fact that they break guitars. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area and there's a hub there, so you can't get anywhere without United. But I started, when I travel, I started mentioning, oh, I'm on a United flight to wherever. Well, United has started responding to me. And not just responding with the thank you for the mention, but did you know that flight is early or delayed? Or I started asking questions of United Airlines. Does this flight have Wi-Fi access on the flight? And They tell me now. And it's very fascinating to see that. Now, the interesting thing there is, they're not just providing customer service or support to me. What are they doing? They're creating branding, they're creating impressions on the internet, they're creating views. Because although they're responding to me on Twitter, thousands of people, or tens of thousands of people, are seeing those answers as well, and they're gaining an impression of that product or service, in this case, the airline, based on that. But it's about interacting, it's not just about broadcasting. On this particular trip, I was just recently in Munich. I pulled up my phone and I posted, I don't know if any of you know Foursquare, and sort of track where you are. I pulled up Foursquare, I posted on Twitter and Facebook, traveling through Munich Airport. Munich Airport responded.